Hello, fantasy baseball fans. I'm Paul Williamson. This is Fantasy MLB Today, a Sports Ethos presentation brought to you by FanDuel. As always, is an honor and a privilege to give on this podcast, give you all some information, advice, help you win your leads, give your team the boost. Before we get to the conversation for today, I'll remind you to follow me on Twitter at Paul W underscore 34. That's at Paul W 30. At Paul W underscore 34 to get more of me. Ask you questions. Hit me up on Twitter. Let me know what ails you or troubles you. Always there to help you out. Same thing on Bluesky with no underscore. That's at Paul W 34 with no underscore. At Paul W 34 with no underscore. And then also make sure you check out the Sports Ethos Fantasy Baseball accounts at Ethos Fantasy BB on Twitter and Ethos Fantasy MLB on Bluesky. Get that means all over in-season content. When we're working the waiver articles go out. It's the case picture guys, my FOB recommendations, my bullpen article, all kinds of goodies there to help you win your league. So make sure you check out sportsethos.com to get that as well. The free blurb feed is there under the MLB tab at sportsethos.com. Make sure you check that out as well. And one more ask, please rate and subscribe to the podcast anywhere we get your podcast on Apple, Spotify, Audible, wherever. And also on YouTube at Sports Ethos on the Sports Ethos YouTube channel. Alrighty. So let's get into the conversation for today, where of course I'll begin with my stream of the day, my FanDuel bet of the day. Then we'll get into some news and notes that happened over the last 24 hours. And then we'll get into a buy low, sell high conversation when it comes to hitters. So this is what I'm going to be doing every Tuesday. We're going to buy low, sell high conversation. 1 week I'll do hitters. The next week I'll do pitchers. I'll alternate back and forth. Last week I did pitchers. The week before that I did hitters. I called those soft buy low, sell high conversations because the sample size is a little bit too small. But we're getting to a point now where we're comfortably at well over 100 plate appearances for a lot of these hitters, and we're starting to get a really good sense of how their season is starting to look, how it's going to go, and so I think that we can start to be a little more confident in our calls. But before we get into all that, let's begin with the stream of the day. For today on Tuesday, on yesterday's podcast, I gave you Kay Cavalli against the Twins, and then for tomorrow on Wednesday, I'm going to give you Joey Cantillo, who is still just 34% rostered on Yahoo, y'all. He is a top 50 arm, in my opinion. We need to make sure he is more widely rostered than this. Up next, for tomorrow, he faces the Kansas City Royal squad, who is very middling against lefties, with the 96th on the WRC plus. They're also seventh in strikeout rate at 23.4%. So they strike out a good amount. Joey Cantillo has proven to be a really solid, high strikeout guy, sitting there with a 24.8% strikeout rate. Well, with an 11% walk rate, I was kind of hoping the walks would resolve themselves a little bit. That is my only concern with Cantillo. But the swing and miss, the strikeout upside is there for him. He's going up against a somewhat weaker Royal offense against lefties. And so I am in on Joey Cantillo as a stream for Wednesday. And my FanDuel bet of the day for today on Tuesday is going to be Brandon Sproat. The over-under on the strikeouts here is at 4.5, and they're giving you plus 115 on the over. Yeah, plus 115 on the over 4.5 for Brandon Sproat. He is facing let's see here, a St. Louis Cardinal offense that is ninth in the league in strikeouts against righties with a 22.8% strikeout rate. So they are one of the higher strikeout squads against right-handers this year. And Brandon Sproat, while his overall swing and miss and whiff numbers are underwhelming, when you look specifically at his curveball and slider, and in my opinion, these two pitches need to be utilized a little bit more, given their high stuff plus grade, and also given the fact he had a 35% whiff rate on both of these pitches so far. And so I think he has enough swing and miss in the arsenal to get to at least 5 strikeouts. The Cardinal offense doesn't scare me too much. I think Brandon Sproat's going to be able to go at least 5 to 6 innings and get you enough whiffs with those two pitches to get him to 5 strikeouts against a Cardinal offense that strikes out a lot. And so I like, especially at plus 115, yeah, that's pretty solid odds there, y'all. I would chase that bet for sure. Okay, so let's get into some news and notes that happened over the last 24 hours. For a more extended look at most recent news, listen to yesterday's podcast where my weekend update, where I dive deep into a lot of specific injury news that have occurred over the last 72 hours or so. This little bit here is going to be covering everything that happened pretty much since I ended the podcast yesterday until about mid Tuesday afternoon. So let's begin first with the Caleb Killian getting his first career save. The Giants passing up Ryan Walker for a save opportunity here, and Ryan Walker's struggles have just continued up to much to my dismay, because I kind of have been harping patience when it comes to Ryan Walker over the first month of the season, because his arsenal hasn't changed. His pitches are still pretty good. That slider is real nice. His sinker hasn't lost velocity. So I kind of thought because his arsenal was the same, his pitches were the same, I thought he would eventually figure it out, but he just has not figured it out lately, y'all. But I will say I think there's a chance that he is still a still he's still in the saves mix. I think this is the committee approach here in San Francisco. I think Ryan Walker is someone who, along with Caleb Killian, is a fringe 12 team play right now, because I don't know if they're going to completely give up on Ryan Walker, because he still has some things that he likes, right? Like I talked about the slider still being a good pitch. It has a nice stuff plus grade that's actually better this year, a 113. It has better glove side movement, and it was already elite, right? That glove side movement was already awesome, and it's gone up even more to 17.7 inches here. He is still the 51% ground ball rate, as allowing a 4.9% barrel rate, 83.9 miles per hour on the average exit velocity against Ryan Walker. So that sinker is doing its job. It's inducing ground balls. He's missing barrels. He's inducing soft contact, and he still has inflated ratios. And I think that eventually we're going to start to see the slider garner more swing and miss, because it is a better pitch than the results have shown. And so, in my opinion, Ryan Walker is someone that if you are not desperate for saves, if you have potentially other options that you could start right now, and you can't afford to hold on to Ryan Walker, I would, because those metrics are encouraging when you look at the movement profile of the slider, the stud plus grade, the overall incredibly two-ply soft contact that he's been allowing, along with the ground balls. I think he has the propensity to turn things around, but he's not a must-add. That's why he's not a must-hold either, and so that's why I call these guys fringe 12-team plays. Caleb Killian, so far this year, has done a really good job of amazing swing and miss, with a 69.7% overall contact rate and a 14.2% swing and strike rate. He also has been inducing soft contact with the 86 mile per hour exit velocity, 5.7% on the barrel, 35% on the hard hit to go with a good ground ball rate of 47.2%. But his problem here, and honestly, the problem with a lot of these arms in this Giant bullpen is going to be walks. It's going to be control. He has a high walk rate. Peyton Wynn, who is another save guy who I think is a deep league speculative ad. Keaton Wynn is definitely someone who you should be keeping your eye on. He could also get saves. He could enter the saves mix, and this could end up being like a three-person committee. Eric Miller might get some saves. The lefty, he already has two, so he might be an option in the ninth if there are a bunch of lefties due up and he has not been used yet. So there are a lot of possibilities here for the Giants. But keep in mind that a lot of these arms have high walk rates that do scare me. There is a lefty that can get the job done that also cuts into these guys. So at the end of the day, Ryan Walker, Caleb Killian, very fringe 12-team plays. If you really need saves, you can have them. Deeper leagues, speculative, you add Keaton Wynn. Go ahead and add Eric Miller, because I think he has an outside shot at snagging a save if there are lefties available. But I don't think there's an obvious answer here for the Giants. I think they're going to piece it together. And once Ryan Walker really starts to turn, if he starts to turn things around, the metrics do say there's a good chance that he does. Then that's when you start to add him more confidently, and I will probably move him up my ranks and maybe a little more aggressive in recommending him. But he's not someone that I think is a must drop. He's not a must add. He's kind of, like I said, fringe 12-team guy here. Same with Caleb Killian. All right, so let's move on here to Chris Paddock getting the DFA for the Marlins. And look, he's been struggling hardcore this year. He hasn't even been a good stream against weaker offenses like I predicted he might be at the beginning of the year because of what he did last year. But you know what? It is what it is. And the Marlins have two legit options in AAA. And I don't know who it's going to be. We're going to have to wait. If you're going based on schedule, it's going to be Robbie Snelling because Chris Paddock's turn of the rotation was Friday, and Paddock's turn of the rotation is Friday, and so that makes sense. But also, what also makes sense that Snelling is not on the 40-man roster, and if the Marlins want to replace Paddock and not have to turn a spot off on the 40-man, then they can bring up Braxton Garrett, who he has also done fairly well in AAA this year. So let's dive into some of the numbers here. I slightly like the idea of Braxton Garrett getting the call here because he already is on the 40-man, and we've already seen him return really good results in the majors. In 2023, I believe, let's see here, we saw him return a 3.66 ERA, a 3.68 FIP, a 115 whip, a decent strikeout rate of 23.7, a really good walk rate of 4.4%. He missed barrels 7.8% on the barrel with a good ground ball rate of 49%. And look, he has excellent vertical drop and also horizontal movement when it comes to his slider and changeup. The slider returning a 40% whiff rate against both righties and lefties, and then right hitters getting that changeup nice at 32% on the whiff rate here. What I like here about Garrett is that he has excellent walk rates here, has had excellent walk rates throughout his career. Now, one thing to note is that it is not happening right now in AAA for him in terms of the walk rate. The strikeout rate is there for him at 25.7%. However, the walk rate is up to 11.9%. And I'm going to kind of call BS on that. He's a better control arm than that. We've seen him return excellent walk rates in extended periods in the majors prior to his injuries. And so I do think he will eventually improve those control numbers. He has decent to solid swing and miss here. He is someone I think has top 50 starting pitcher upside if he ends up getting the call. Now, Robbie Snelling is someone who might have more upside than Braxton Garrett, but he's definitely the more riskier option. Unlike Garrett, Snelling has always kind of had issues with his control, and this year being no different, sitting at a let's see here, it is a really high walk rate. I cannot find the number on my sheet here from Robbie Snelling, but it's a 40% strikeout rate to a 13.6% on the walk rate. Sorry, it took me a second there. It also, while he has a 40% strikeout rate, he only has a 10.2% swing and strike rate this year. So it's not as much swing and miss this year as the high strikeout number might suggest. But overall, though, he has consistently had really good swing and strike numbers throughout the minors. The question is the walks going to be the control? As of right now, Braxton Garrett and Snelling both have walk problems in AAA, but Braxton Garrett at least has shown elite command in the past, and coming off his injuries, it makes sense that's going to take time for that command to come back. And so I do think in the I think that Braxton Garrett has the inroad because he already is on the 40-man, but the Brewers, sorry, not the Brewers, the Twins here. No, my God, the Marlins. The Marlins are going to slow play, or might not want, or might decide they don't want to juggle the rotation at all and go ahead and get Snelling on the 40-man and start him on Friday. Could be one of the two. I lean Garrett, but don't make any moves on your fantasy team until you find out who it is. All right, let's move on here. Moving on to Brandon Woodruff. We were told it's a dead arm situation, but yet he's going to go see Dr. Meester. And that is, anytime you hear that doctor's name, your picture is going to go see him, that's kind of ominous. And so it makes you wonder just how serious this issue is. Is it more than just a dead arm situation? Obviously, we'll find out more here in the coming day or two. But Brandon Woodruff going to go see the dreaded Dr. Meester is never a good sign. This might end up being a solid side for Logan Henderson. I talked a lot about him on yesterday's podcast about how the strikeout upside is there. He just hasn't quite shown the full propensity of it here in the majors with lackluster whiff rates, but we do know that the strikeout and swing and miss upside is there for Logan Henderson. And can that translate to the majors? I think that he is a deep league ad right now. He is someone I'm more watching in my 12 teams. I don't think he's a must add in these 12 teamers. I'm not too sure who he faces next in the rotation, but if it's a weak enough offense, I think you can trust Logan Henderson against weaker offenses right now, at least in 12 teamers. He's not a bona fide ad just yet, but I think he can. I think he has the potential. He certainly has the talent to be a 12 team viable starting pitcher in fantasy. I think we got to wait a little bit to find out for sure just how aggressive I'm going to be in recommending him as an ad. But as of right now, I'm just seeing this a deep league ad. Maybe a 12 team speculative ad if you just have a roster spot that you just kind of want to play around with, and sure, why not? Let's see here. Let's talk about the Boston Red Sox rotation here. Peyton Tolley had an amazing outing yesterday where he got 8 strikeouts against the Tigers in a W. So that was a really good sign there for him. Now the question is going to be, first, Sonny Gray is looking like he is going to be returning on Wednesday. And this is per Ian Brown of MLB.com. All of this depend on how well he does in his bullpen session that we're having, that he is looking to have to kind of see just how well he is. If it goes up well and he is able to have his little bullpen without any issues, then he'll likely return on Wednesday. And then we're getting good news out of Garrett Crochet, and there's a chance he might be back with a minimal time missed. And so that is also going to be something to keep an eye on when it comes to Peyton Tolley. No, now there is the question of whether or not Brian Bayo should stay in the rotation or not. His struggles have been apparent. The Red Sox are already using an opener for him, so he might already have 1 foot out the door of the rotation. So it does make sense that Peyton Tolley might take Brian Bayo's spot. So for right now, Peyton Tolley is someone to have on 12 team rosters because he will make his next start against the Rays, and that's a great outing right there. You're starting Peyton Tolley all over the place against the Rays coming up later this week. But the question is going to be, will he make his next turn in the rotation? That will depend on if Garrett Crochet is healthy. That will depend on if Sonny Gray makes his debut or makes his return as well. It also will depend on Brian Bayo and what they do with him. My thought process here is going to be Peyton Tolley is going to stay in the rotation. That's my speculation here, because Brian Bayo has been horrible. Chad Tracy is coming up from AAA as the manager, has a lot of familiarity with guys like Connolly Early and Peyton Tolley. So I think he's going to have a bit of a bias toward them because he has seen just how good they can be and sees the potential there. And so I think Chad Tracy is more likely to make that move than maybe an Alex Cora may have been willing to make the move here, especially seeing how as Bayo already has an opener right now for him. He's not even a full-time starter. He's a piggybacker right now. So we'll have to obviously see what pans out. But as of now, Peyton Tolley needs to be on your roster, at least for the start against the Rays, and then we'll see what happens after that. Let's see here. Yonier Diaz, excuse me. Yonier Diaz is going on a 10-day injured list because of a left oblique injury here. Look, that's just horrible timing. Because if you remember back around April 18th, he was given a couple of days off as a quote mental break by the Astros because he had struggled mightily. Well, since April 18th, he has a home run in 48 plate appearances, batting 333 with a 500 slugging percentage. And so things have started to look a lot better for Yadier Diaz. He started to look more like the guy we saw from last year after this little mental break that he had, but now he's going on the shelf with this oblique injury. I think in 12-team one catcher leagues, you should be dropping him because he already is kind of down in the fringes of the top 10 or 12 of the catchers for fantasy right now, anyways. So you can go ahead and jettison him, maybe pick up someone like Gabriel Moreno, who just came off the injury list, see if Liam Hicks potentially is available. Moises Ballesteros, see if maybe he is still wandering around on your waiver wire because he has catcher eligibility on Yahoo at least. So, there are options on the wire that you can go take a look for. Dylan Dingler is another one who might be available for you, who you can drop Yadier Diaz for. And when Diaz is closer to a return, whenever he is back activated, then I think you can consider him in your batch of options in 12-team one catcher leagues. If you're someone who just kind of streams the position, plugs and plays catchers as the days go by, then Yadier Diaz should be on that list of catchers. Considering I think he is a top 10 to 12 fantasy catcher still, with upside to be a top 5 if he can turn things completely around like he had been before he went down. So keep an eye on it. Add him back if you can, whenever he returns, but he's a pretty safe drop. If you're in a two-catcher, 12-team league, his replacement, Christian Vasquez, I think is a potential add right now because he has a good schedule. He still has a good ability to lift and pull the ball, even though he doesn't hit the ball particularly hard. He's playing his next 2 games in Houston. He goes to Cincinnati, and then he goes back to Houston. And so over the next week and a half or so, he has the ballpark environment for his type of player, a batter profile to play up, for him to potentially run into a few homers for you. So if you're in a two catcher setup, Christian Vasquez, I think, is a short term add while he has favorable ballpark settings for him to play in right now. And so I would add him right now for the short term, but I would drop him as soon as he leaves Houston and goes to a not so friendly park for his hitter profile. All right, let's see here. Moving on. Let's see here. The Casey Schmidt got the start yesterday for the Giants. Matt Chapman went to the bench, and I love seeing that. I expressed some worry on yesterday's podcast with Bryce Eldridge getting the call up, making a crowded Giants infield in which Casey Schmidt might get pushed out. Well, at least for the first game, he got to start at third over Matt Chapman. What I would imagine, at least for the first week, we're going to see is Casey Schmidt get starts at first base, second base, third base, shortstop, and get those starts and give the veterans at least one day off to start. And then they'll evaluate from there and see how Bryce Eldridge has done. Because like I said yesterday on yesterday's podcast, Casey Schmidt has just been too damn good in the bat to bench him, especially considering the overall struggles we have seen from the Giants. They did not bring up Bryce Eldridge to ride the pine, and Casey Schmidt had been the DH. And the only spot really for Eldridge is DH or first base, which is Schmidt or Rafael Devers. And so at the end of the day, Schmidt's going to have to find at bats. He can play almost any infield position. There has been some rumblings that we might see him in the outfield at some point. That would be the easiest spot to put him out there because that is where they are the weakest in terms of offense. We've got a guy like Drew Gilbert out there in center field. Heliot Ramos is fine, and then I believe as Harrison Bader is injured right now. So there is more room in the outfield than there is the infield, but that's why they brought up Jesus Rodriguez. But Jesus Rodriguez could be also used at catcher for the struggling Patrick Bailey. So they've got potential room if they just do decide to put Casey Schmidt in the outfield. But until that actually happens, until we start to see reports of Casey Schmidt actually getting reps in the outfield, getting practice out there, shagging fly balls, things of that nature, I'm not 100% going to believe it until I really see those things happen. So keep an eye on that situation. But like I said, dude, Schmidt's bat has been too good to leave out of the lineup. Jordan Westburg, another setback for this man, and it's like turning into the Baltimore Orioles Royce Lewis in the sense that is he ever going to be healthy? Because when he's healthy, he is an elite bat. He is someone that can really help your fantasy squads, has top 50 potential, but he just has to stay healthy. And we just have yet to see that from him. He was in the middle of a throwing program with a partially torn UCL, and now it's just another setback, more soreness, more tightness. So he's been shut down. They're going to reevaluate. We'll see what happens from here. The one thing, obviously, we're trying to avoid here is surgery. But honestly, especially if I have Westburg in a dynasty league, I want to see him get the surgery. Just get it over with. Go ahead, because even if he were to try to come back this year, at this point, we're looking at what, late July, early August, in my opinion, as a speculation here of when he probably will return. And that's not like an amazing amount of production in which you're still risking him re-injuring and re-aggravating the elbow. So let's go ahead, get him the surgery, in my opinion. Get him right, and let's just get him ready for 2027. Because as of right now, it just doesn't seem like it would be worth pushing him back without surgery. But here's the thing, though, from Baltimore's perspective, not from my fantasy dynasty league's perspective, from the Baltimore Orioles' perspective, third base has been a crapshoot. It's been horrible. Blaze Alexander hasn't been the guy. Kobe Mayo hasn't turned into the kind of bat that they thought he would be. They're even playing Weston Wilson there now, and Wilson has done okay lately, and he does have a little bit of history with some good quality contact in small samples in years prior, but he's 31 years old and he's barely played in the majors, and so there's not a whole lot of faith here that Weston Wilson is going to be the answer here for the Orioles. And so at the end of the day, for me, I just can't. I can see why the Orioles are going to try to get Westburg back this year, because their third base options have been dreadful. They've been really, really bad. Blaze there, Kobe Mayo, and now Weston Wilson. None of these guys are really sticking out. Alexander and Mayo both had their shots, and Mayo had a little run there where he hit 3 homers in a matter of a few games. But Blaze Alexander had himself a nice start to the year, but none of them have really locked down the position. And so I can see why the O's would want to try to get Westburg back. But at the end of the day, it might be better long term for Westburg if he were just to go ahead and get the surgery, especially if he just can't get healthy, because he keeps having these setbacks. The return date keeps getting pushed back further and further and further. And so, obviously keep an eye on the situation. They know more than I do about this situation, but in my opinion, I think that's where we're headed. All right. So we're on watch for a couple of guys. Before I started to record the podcast, we did not hear whether or not Cal Raleigh or Michael Harris were going to be in their respective lineups. They don't play till late tonight, so we probably won't know until early evening of when they release the lineups, so whether they'll be back. So keep an eye on that situation. Both Harris and Raleigh are both candidates for the injured list, especially if they don't make their starts today. Then I become a little more worried about whether or not they're going to go on the IL. Now we did get good news on let's see here. For George Springer. Sorry, George Springer is leading off and is DHing today. And so that's good news, especially after the x-ray came back with positive results where he did not re-injure his toe. And so now he is back in the lineup and leading off as a DH. Ben Rice, though, on the bench for this one, his third straight game on the bench. So keep an eye on that situation. Ben Rice is an IL candidate. That would give Paul Goldschmidt a little bit of run, but his numbers just don't look all that great. He hasn't been producing that well. So maybe if you need a corner infield option in a short term, in a deeper 15-team league setup, I guess, but I'm not rushing to get Goldschmidt on my rosters. One last bit of news before we get into my buy low, sell high conversation. is going to be the Reds bullpen. Emilio Pagan coughed it up yet again yesterday. It hasn't looked great for him. The metrics are still not what you want them to be, especially with his high fly ball and barrel rates in Great America Ballpark. He isn't quite getting it done like he had last year. I think that right now, Pagan should be considered a slightly better than fringe 12 team ad. I'm not being aggressive and calling for his drop. If you want to hold on to him, I understand. But if you need to speculatively add someone, especially in a deeper format, I will go after someone like a Grant Ashcraft. Now, much like I discussed with the previous bullpen that I talked about earlier that I can't think of right now, this bullpen of the Giants, just like with the Giants bullpen, there are a lot of options here that have good swing and miss, but the walks are a problem. Walks have been a problem for Ashcraft. They've been a problem for Pagan. They've been a problem for Connor Phillips, who's another potential ad. The reason why I don't think it's going to be Tony Santayon is that it was never going to be Santayon last year. He has always been one of their best relievers in high leverage situations. He is comfortably their fireman guy. They like to use him, Santayon, whenever they're in the seventh inning in the bases are loaded and there's 2 outs. They got to get it out. They're going to turn to him. Whenever they have a 1-1 ball game in the 8th inning and 3, 4, 5 are due up, they're going to turn to him. He is the guy that they will use in their highest leverage situation prior to the 9th inning. And that's the same reason why I think eventually it's going to be Trevor McGill closing games out for the Brewers again and not Abner Uribe. I think that these firemen relievers are that for a reason. They are good at that job, and they are the guy that have been able to bridge the gap to the 9th inning. And Santillan has flourished in that role, and I do not think they're going to take him away off that role. That means it's going to be the Graham Ashcraft. Connor Phillips got a couple of saves this year already, but again, they have walk problems. They walk everybody, and that to me is the one concern that I have, which is why I think that they are a deep league speculative ad. I'm not adding them on my 12 teams right now until I either see the walks improve or they comfortably start getting save opportunities in Cincinnati. Because as of right now, because their performance isn't just obvious. It's not like off the charts. Oh my God, we got to get this guy in the 9th inning, because none of those things are true. It makes it hard for me to say with with abundance of confidence that Emilio Pagan, one, is going to lose the job, and two, who is going to take his spot. I think at the end of the day, if he does lose his job, there's going to be a little bit of a committee situation. The Reds are going to try and let someone take the job and earn the job before they give it outright to somebody. So keep an eye on the situation. We only have deep league speculative ads now, and we just have a decent hold in Pagan. Okay, let's get into the buy low, sell high conversation. That's right, buy low, sell high, everyone's favorite fantasy topic. And let's get into some sell high bets. We'll talk about hitters today. Next Tuesday, I'll talk about pitchers, and I'll just alternate between those two on Tuesdays. So let's get into one here that might be a little obvious. I don't know. Maybe a manager out there needs to hear this, but it'll Ildemaro Vargas. I'm probably demolishing that name, but Ildemaro Vargas in the Diamondbacks is, I think, a sell high right now. I do not buy what we're seeing from him. Look, he has an 106 plate appearances. He already has 6 home runs with 19 runs, 21 RBI. The strikeout to walk numbers are where they usually are. Vargas has always had a really good hit tool, always had a really good chase rates, whiff rate, strikeout rate, walk rate, all that loveliness. He's always been that kind of guy, but he's never been this 6 home runs and 100 plate appearances kind of dude. We are seeing an increase in the barrel rate all the way up to 5.4%. Now, look, I can see this turning into a Geraldo Perdomo situation, in which his season kind of snuck up on me, because he is someone with an elite hit tool and a ton of contact can allow the StatCast numbers to play up bigger than what they show on the surface. And so what I mean by that is a 5 to 6% barrel rate can play up like a 9% barrel rate if there's a contact rate in the high 80s or the low 90s, like we do see from Vargas, right? That is something that Vargas does have. He does have a really good striking rate. He makes a ton of contact overall because he has really good back to ball skills. But it's just 106 plate appearances. He would have to maintain a 5 to 6% barrel rate all throughout the season, and that is something that he has never done. But the thing is that like not only does he have to do that, he has to get the ball off, continue to get the ball off the ground. The ground ball rate has dropped considerably from where it was usually at 52% or higher. It is now down to 43%, and the line drive rate has gone up to 27%. These are numbers we are way outside of the norm for Vargas. At least with Perdomo, you could see some of these metrics were the same from year to year, and he just added on a little lift, he just added on a little pull, and he added on a little more barrels to get to his season. What we're seeing right now for Vargas are dramatic changes in things at the ground ball rate and things at the line drive rate. Even that 5.4% barrel rate is a 3 to 4% increase from what we've seen from him in years past. And so for Vargas, I consider him a sell high or just someone who you should just wait for the regression to come, and don't be afraid to drop him if he starts to turn in like a long string of offers. Like if he goes like 2 for 20 or has a very poor week at some point, I would drop him. I would go ahead and get rid of him because that is a sign that the regression is coming. And so for Vargas, maybe try and sell him right now. I remember my conversation last week with Trent Grisham. I would try and see if you can trade Vargas for him. I would try to see if you can trade Adarma Vargas for maybe even one of my sell highs coming up, Joe Adell. Go ahead and try and see if you can get someone who was kind of like a late 150s draft pick who is kind of struggling right now. I would try and see if you can trade Vargas for one of those guys because I don't think Vargas is going to be a top 150 guy. I do not think Vargas is going to be a top 200 guy. I think Ivana Vargas is going to be a very mid batting average kind of dude. I think the batting average is going to settle around 240, 250. He's going to have a little bit of steals. The power is going to go away, and you're going to be glad he's off your roster. So Vargas is someone who I am not super in on. Let's talk about Mickey Moniak. My God, this guy has gone on a tear lately. He has 11 home runs and 111 plate appearances with a 412 ISO. My God, 412 on the ISO. That's insane. His slash is 333, 375, and 745 on the slug. But here's the problem. He is still a platoon bat, and he is still outperforming dramatically what he does at home than he does on the road. So he is a strong side platoon bat that you only start at cores. No, I don't want that. And so right now, try and see if you can turn these surface stats into maybe Joe Adell. Maybe try and see if you get Brian Reynolds. Maybe try and see if you can get some of these guys who were drafted between picks 100 and 150 for Moniak, because Moniak was a 12-team draft pick this year. He is not nobody. He is someone who was drafted to begin the year, was at least on draft boards. And so maybe you can get something from Moniak right now. Because look, even last year, in which we have a bigger sample size of his home and away splits, he had 15 of his 24 homers were at cores, and he batted 230 on the road with an 83 on the WRC plus. And this year, he has 9 of his 11 home runs at cores, 9 of his 11 at cores, with a 254 batting average, but only 40 plate appearances outside the course so far this year for him. And so in a larger sample size, what we saw for him last year, I think is more likely what we're going to see for him this year. Yes, I know he has excellent quality contact numbers, but you know who else did? Brenton Doyle. And go and take a look at Brenton Doyle's home and away splits. Yeah, you're welcome. So it is, the problem is that hitting in cores messes with baseball players because the ball acts differently at cores, right? It breaks differently. The break of the ball is not as sharp. And so when they leave cores to a different environment where the ball reacts differently, it messes with their timing. It messes with their it just messes with them because now the ball is reacting differently than what they've seen for the previous 4 to 8 to 10 games. So if they go on a long homestand at Colorado before they go on a long road trip, those first few games on the road are going to be really difficult because the ball just reacts differently and looks differently outside of Coors. And so that is why, right? And so at the end of the day, we have a good long sample size of last year in which he was very poor on the road. And so he is a better hitter at Coors, obviously, and he's a platoon bat. So he is a Coors stream platoon bat. That's who he is. And so go ahead and see if you can trade him right now. See if you can get someone within the top 150 for him. I think Brian Reynolds would be an option. Joe Adell would be an option. I'm trying off the top of my head, trying to Kyle Stowers, who just came off the IL, is someone who I would consider. I'm not a big believer in Mickey Moniak. My last sell high on the list is JJ Weatherholt. And this is more to do with his power than anything else. He's already hit 7 home runs in 161 plate appearances. That is basically on a day near 30 home run pace. And I don't think Weatherholt, at least right now, is a 30 home run hitter. We're looking at the reason why he is hitting these home runs is because his lift is way higher in the majors than what we saw in the minors. We had a 12-degree launch angle in AAA. In the minors last year. It's up to 17.6 degrees here. The fly ball rate has gone is usually in the 31 to 32% range, and in the majors is up to 45%. So we have a day near 15% increase on the fly ball rate with an increase in the launch angle that we've never seen from him in the minors. I think that eventually these numbers will normalize. I think he will start to turn the fly balls into line drives because that's who he was all throughout. We saw in the minors was a high line drive rate in the 24-25 range. And that number is now below 20% in the majors. So I think some of those fly balls are going to turn into line drives, which is going to be good for the average, right? I think he's going to have a good average. I think he's going to have a decent amount of steals. I just question the home runs. It just kind of reminds me a little bit of Jacob Wilson last year. Jacob Wilson came out last year and hit like 5 or 6 homers right out the bat. And people were like, oh, wow, look, he's providing power now. And I said then that the power wasn't real. And it ended up being right. He only ended up hitting like 8 or 9 for the year. But I think JJ Weatherholt is a better home run hitter than Jacob Wilson. He is still someone who right now, I think rest of season is in line for another 7 homers. I think he will get to 15 homers. But I don't think he's going to continue this home run pace by any means. I would consider him someone who's going to be around 15 homers, around 15 steals with a solid batting average. That's a good fantasy player, but that is not who he is now. And so I would definitely try to consider trading him for someone in the top 100. I would trade him for one of my buy lows that's coming up. Trade him for Trey Turner. Then I'll talk about Trey Turner here in a little bit. So go ahead and see what you can get right now for JJ Weatherholt because of his power surge that I don't think will last. And don't forget about 2 names that I mentioned yesterday that I think are sell highs. You want more information on these names, listen to yesterday's podcast. That's Ozzy Albies and Jose Caballero. Go listen to yesterday's podcast as to why I think those 2 names are also sell highs. Now let's get to my buy lows. And I already mentioned this name already. It's Joe Adell of the Angels. And the main reason here is his power has mysteriously gone away so far this year. He only has 4 home runs, only has a 0.97 ISO. Yeah, Joe Adell, his ISO is below 100. Yeah, that's not gonna last. Now look, Joe Adell, the biggest question has always been the hit tool. He not only did he get the strikeout rate down last year, the strikeout rate is down again this year, all the way down to 21%. Yeah, 21%. You had told me at the beginning of the year that Joe Adell was going to get his strikeout rate down to 21%. I would have said he was going to be the steal of the draft. But right now, that strikeout is down, but the power is not there. Only 4 home runs so far this year. So what gives? I would say the batted ball data is something that's going to eventually work itself out. The ground ball rate has been the same between 37 and 38%, but we have a line drive rate that has gone up and a fly ball rate that has gone down. And so I think that eventually that's going to normalize. We're going to see more line drives turn to fly balls because that is who Adell has always been, right? Adell has never been a high line drive rate guy. He's always been a high fly ball rate guy. And that's how he's able to get the 37 homers last year because the bat speed is still there for him. The bat speed is still at 76.9 miles per hour. The fast swing rate is still at 68%. The dude still has an elite bat speed. He still has the ability to make a ton of contact. He's has a 76% contact rate. The end zone contact rate is 86%. And so he's making a lot of contact, making a lot of contact in the zone with an incredibly high bat speed. He's going to start hitting more home runs. That batted ball data, the line drives are going to go back down. The fly balls are going to go back up. That's going to help the home run production. He's going to get him some more power. There's no way that he can improve his strikeout rate with the same elite bat speed, with the same elite fast swing rate, and continue to and not have the power to go with it. And this doesn't make any sense. Joe Adell, I think, is my favorite buy low right now because I think he is much better than this. I think he's someone that you can probably trade Mickey Moniak for him because it's not like Joe Adell was a super early draft pick, right? I think you could trade Moniak for him. I think you could probably trade JJ Weatherholt for him because Joe Adell will get you 30 home runs. Joe Adell will give you that type of production. And so I think Joe Adell is someone who I'll be trying to get on my rosters right now because I still heavily believe in the man. Trey Turner is my next buy low option here. In the name that I would consider trading him for is O'Neal Cruz. I mentioned O'Neal Cruz as a sell high a few podcasts ago, and it's starting to kind of happen, y'all. Over last 2 weeks, the batting average has gone down to 21, 216. The strike area has gone up to 39%. And so we are starting to see the big floor with O'Neal Cruz right now. And so I think now might be the time to kind of get underneath O'Neal Cruz. And I would try and reach out to the owner of the guy who has Trey Turner on his roster and see if you can get him. Look, as of right now, Trey Turner is only batting something like 230. He only has a handful of homers, 6 steals. But look, he's has a 90.2 mile per hour exit velocity. That is his highest since 2021. He has a hard hit rate of 39%, but the career mark is 41%. So he's not too far off of his career quality contact numbers, in which he's never been the type of guy to have incredible quality contact numbers to begin with. And he's had some seasons, but that hasn't always been his thing. He's been more of a bat control kind of dude. And right now we see the line drive rate is down to 14.7%. That number is typically around 19 to 20%. The fly ball rate is a career high right now at 40%. And the thing is, whenever you don't make really good contact with the ball, you don't want to hit a lot of fly balls because if you're not hitting those fly balls very hard, they're not going to go very far. And so for Trey Turner, I think eventually we're going to see that sub 15% line drive rate correct itself. We're going to see those fly balls turn back into line drives, which for someone like Trey Turner, that's a good thing because you want those line drives to turn into doubles. You want those line drives to turn into singles to get him on the base pads with his 100 percentile sprint speed. So he's going to be able to score more runs. He has a career bat BIP of 330 plus, and that bat BIP right now is 276. And so we need him to get that ball on the line. He needs to hit those line drives that will help improve that bat BIP number because he is a career 330 bat BIP guy. That bat BIP is down at 270. That is going to eventually correct itself. He's eventually going to start hitting more line drives, hitting less fly balls, and that's going to help his batting average. It's going to help him get on base more, steal more bases, score more runs, and that's what you want Trey Turner to do. Now, he's going to have at least a 5 to 6% barrel rate, and much like I talked about with Perdomo, he has a good hit tool. It's not an elite hit tool. And so he has just enough lift, just enough barrel, just enough contact rate to get to around 15 homers, right? He's not some type of big time home run kind of dude. He's not a major lift and pull guy like an Isaac Paredes kind of guy, but he has just enough that I think he's going to get you to the teens, right? He's going to get you to 13 homers, 14 homers, 15 homers, going to get you a 290 to 300 batting average with lots of runs scored, lots of steals. I think that makes him a solid 5 category asset because he's going to be able to get just enough of the power department to matter. He's going to get you a good amount of skills, a good average, good runs, and all that stuff. So Trey Turner is someone who I would want on my roster right now. I would try and see if you have O'Neal Cruz, I would trade Cruz for Trey Turner right now. Lickety split in a heartbeat. All right, my final buy low name is Jackson Merrill. And I just can't quit this guy. He's not off to a horrible start. He does have 4 home runs and 6 steals on 140 plate appearances. That's roughly 16 to 20 homers and 25 to 30 steals in a season, which is a solid pace. But he's only batting 220 right now. And I think that the batting average is going to eventually improve because he has a low BABIP right now, well below his career average. He still has a solid exit velocity of 89.3. The barrel rate sitting at 10.4. The hard hit rate still sitting at a nice 44.8%. The barrel rate normally is a little bit better than the 10.4%. Is usually between 11 and 13%. So we're going to see a little more power here. And also, and a very encouraging sign here is the bat speed. The bat speed's gone up from 72.0 miles per hour last year, with the going up to 73 this year. So I'm sorry. Yes, 72 up to 73, so a tick up. And the fast swing rate is up from 19.8% up to 31.3%. So that fast swing rate is kind of overlooked sometimes. And so he has a 12% increase in the fast swings, over a tick increase on the bat speed itself. And so for me, I think Jackson Merrill is going to start making better contact with the ball, especially considering he still has pretty solid contact numbers with a 76% contact rate with an aggressive approach in which he runs into the ball inside the zone a lot. And so that is another reason why I think he's going to eventually start to turn things around, because he makes a lot of contact. That contact is high quality, and I think it's going to increase the batting average, get him some good homers. He's a steals asset kind of guy, and so I think that he is going to be better than his current pace. I think he's someone that can still get the 25 homers, get the 35 steals, bat 260 plus. And so I think that's what Jackson Merrill is. That's who I think you could possibly get. And I would try and maybe trade maybe a Bryce Terrain for Jackson Merrill. That would be a trade I would do. I would try and see it maybe they're really panicking and you can Mike jettison Mickey Moniak for him right now. Just send the offers out, see how your manager is feeling on him and see if he can make a deal, because I think Jackson Merrill is going to be just fine. I wouldn't panic too much. The season already isn't all that bad. And so I don't know how much of a buy low this is, but I just want to let you know that he is going to be better than what we've seen so far. And I am still in on Jackson Merrill. All right, that brings me to the podcast. As always, it is an honor and a privilege to give this podcast, give y'all some information, advice, and help you win your leagues, give your team the boost. So, remind you to follow me on Twitter at PaulW_34, on Bluesky at PaulW34 with no underscore. Make sure you rate and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you get podcasts on Apple, Audible, Spotify, wherever it is. Rate and subscribe there, and also on YouTube, the Sports Ethos YouTube channel at Sports Ethos there. And then please check out sportsethos.com. Go to the MLB tab for the free blurb feed popping off every day. Give you free fantasy baseball analysis of all the news that happens all throughout the day. And also, of course, the Sports Ethos Fantasy Baseball accounts at Ethos Fantasy BB on Twitter, at Ethos Fantasy MLB on Bluesky. Updates all of our in-season content where the blurb feed pops off and there to help you win your league. So make sure you check us out, y'all. We are there to help you. We want to see you dominate. That is what we want to do. So let us do our job and help you out. Check us out, y'all. All right. So I am Paul Williamson. This is Fantasy MLB Today, a Sports Ethos presentation brought to you by FanDuel. Y'all have a good one.